Welcome to Secrets of Social Impact Communicators, the podcast where we explore how nonprofit leaders can breathe, lead, and grow. I'm your host, Nate Birt, founder of Silver Maple Strategies. So good to have you with us today. Today's conversation is particularly meaningful to me, coming from a food and agriculture background. You don't have to have any experience in food or nutrition or food distribution, but I think you're going to love this discussion with Mike Servello, founder and CEO of Compassion Coalition, Inc., who has really developed an incredible system, team, partnership network for feeding people who are going through challenging times, economic hardship in New York City, and really has so much to share, broadly speaking, no matter where you find yourself in the United States or the world, about the power of bringing neighbors together to help one another. And I am also going to give you a sense of just who Mike is, right? Mike has worked in ministry. Mike has worked in developing a nonprofit, debt-free, finding opportunities to help literally millions of people. And again, really has a call to action about working across the aisle, right? We live at a time of extraordinary political division. Mike is here to tell you it is possible to do great things in a way that will absolutely blow your mind. And that's really aligned with a specific resource that I want to share with you today. We've actually just provided or created what we call the fundraising confidence cheat sheet. Too often, nonprofit leaders are in a corner, or at least that feels that way, right? With the funding landscape in turmoil, with funding deadlines or funding depletion breathing down your neck. There are real opportunities in spite of that to make a difference. And Mike is going to share with you how he and his team have made this possible for the clients they serve. This cheat sheet is going to help you also sort of think outside the box and really challenge some of those limiting beliefs that may be holding you back. So I want to commit to you. I'm happy to share that resource with you. And if you reach out to me at nate@silvermaplestrategies.com, I will make sure to get you a copy of that. You can also go check out our YouTube channel where we have a recent webinar on this topic around messaging, limiting beliefs, and you can get access to the cheat sheet that way as well. If you watch to the end of that broadcast and scan the QR code, you'll fill out a quick survey and then get that resource absolutely free. So at any rate, without further ado, I am excited to introduce to you Mike Servello. Again, I mentioned he's founder and CEO of Compassion Coalition. And Mike is going to share his journey to impact work. He's going to tell you how this really sort of step-by-step, providentially, as he describes it, happened, and what it's meant for his worldview, the kinds of character traits he thinks are absolutely crucial for nonprofit leaders today, and how to engage productively policymakers, no matter their political persuasion, in a way that leads with education and outreach and that brings the right stakeholders to the table to get enormous results. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Mike Servello. Well, welcome back to Secrets of Social Impact Communicators. I'm your host, Nate Birt, and today I am so excited to have with me Mike Servello, founder and CEO of Compassion Coalition, Inc. Mike, thanks so much for being here today.
Great to be with you, Nate.
I wonder if you could start by talking a little bit, Mike, about yourself and what it is that you do at Compassion Coalition. Maybe give us a little backstory.
Okay. Yeah, I started Compassion Coalition basically at the end of 1999 while I was pastoring in Utica, New York. I'd been a pastor there for, at that time, since 1980, I believe it was. So it was almost 20 years. And Utica was in the midst of a tremendous recession. We had a strategic air command base that had been there for years, and it had a number of peripheral companies, government contractors, and there were other local companies that depended on the base. They decided to close it. When they did, we had one of the highest population losses of any county in the United States. Well, from that, and then the loss of business, it was devastating. The mayor of our city, I think they had him on prime time or 2020. He was a pretty outspoken, cantankerous kind of a person. Said, I'll sell any building. The main street of Utica is called Genesee Street. There were so many empty buildings. He said, if you'll come in here and put a business, I'll sell you the building for $1. There was no buildings being sold, all empty. And so what happened in the middle of all that, the poverty levels were off the hook. And I felt an impression, because I'm a pastor, I needed to do something about it. And I felt an impression to get a warehouse, fill it with food, and start helping people. I didn't have the money, so I started to cast a vision for it. And a local realtor lady said, let me show you a building. As I went to see the building, it was about a 20,000 square foot, 25,000 square foot building. She said, my boyfriend owns this. We're both widowed, and I'll get you a great deal. So 10 minutes later, I'm sitting in the office of one of the wealthiest men in our area. I shared the vision, and he said, I'm asking $500,000. He goes, but for you, I'll give it to you for whatever you want. You want to pay $200, $250, I'll hold the mortgage. You just tell me, no worries.
Wow.
And I said, well, give me a chance. Let me pray about it. I'm a little bit overwhelmed. It's happening so fast. And, as a pastor, I went back and prayed about it. And I really felt I didn't have the money. And I just felt the impression, asked him to donate it. And that would be a sign to me that the Lord was in this and that something supernatural is going to happen. Now, here's a man I never met. Remember, before this, I had never met this man.
Right.
I sent back the offer with the realtor. I said, I'm asking him to donate the building. And she goes, well, I said, well, whatever, just put it before him. I don't hear anything for a couple of months. I get a letter. I didn't even get a call. I get a letter in the mail a couple months later. If you're still desirous of receiving the property located at such and such, I will donate it for $1 and I will give the dollar. And we were off to the races. So I knew something supernatural was going to happen. So I got the building. I didn't have any food connections. I went to Walmart. They had just opened the distribution center. And Walmart's a phenomenally generous company. I mean, I can't say enough good about Walmart. They began to donate immediately. I went to local grocery chains. They began to donate. And so, boom, we're feeding people, not charging anything. We're just doing it. Well, then, pretty soon you've got the cost of the warehouse. I had to hire someone to run it. So that's salary.
Right.
Well, the county executive was a friend of mine. And he said, I'll give you a grant. He gave us the first year's cost and a grant. And that was wonderful. And we gave away a lot of food. Well, the second year, I didn't realize you got to go apply for the grant again.
Wow.
When I got to the table, I'm there with like I'm telling you, the city is in an economic meltdown. And so I'm at the table with other social service ministries and groups. And the pie is sliced so thin and people are so desperate. I thought, I can't do this every year. And so honestly, I went back and prayed and I said, Lord, you got to help me. And I get this idea, start a low-cost store, ask Walmart to sell you their excess, which you call salvage.
Sure.
And mark it up just enough to sustain the operation. You're not there to make money. We're just there to sustain the operation. They loved it. We loved it. And we never knew from week to week because the truck would come in. It'd be one day a week. They'd give us whatever their excess was. It was pennies on a dollar. And we would mark it up a little bit. And it became like a fun thing in Utica to go stop by there. And it sustained the operation from 2002 to 2016. Well, 2016, I retired from full-time pastoring. And I said, I get bored quickly. So let me involve. And started to tweak this, tweak that, enhance what we put on the shelves. Because now I'm starting to understand the area we're in was called a food desert, very underserved, a lot of crime. All the politicians are friends, so I talked to them. And I said, look, I'd like to expand our footprint here. And from the governor's office right down, county executive, mayor, they all helped me. We built a state-of-the-art, low-cost grocery store in a food desert in Utica, a one-way street, violence, shooting, crack houses. They're all laughing like, you got to be out of your mind. We changed the entire neighborhood.
Wow.
We opened that store. The entire neighborhood changed. Not one problem. I mean, you'll get the occasional theft, but what we tell people is don't steal because you diminish yourself. We'll help you. You don't need to steal. Don't steal, right? Don't steal. If someone comes in, they don't have money, legit, there's always scammers, but If a social service agency or a church says, look, we got this family or these refugees or this guy's out of work, we generate a gift card for him. Let him shop for free. So it changed the neighborhood. And it was so successful, constantly having visitors. We had the gentleman that was the CEO of Trader Joe's, when he retired, came to see me. And he said, I got an idea to do the same kind of concept in Boston. He called it Daily Table. So he looked at our model first, but he went a little bit different route. He went with more subsidies and government funding and more like very small, like a community, small, it's very small footprint. And as soon as the Trump cuts came, that was it. They closed. So we've been, thank God, we're healthy, we're strong, we're debt-free. We don't receive any ongoing help. Not that I'm opposed to it. I'll take any help that people want to give it. But we've proven the efficacy of this type of a model. And we're in discussions with government folks. We know the wheels of government work. They work very, very slowly. And then you get changes of administration. And so I've talked to leaders on both sides of the aisle. And I said, this is an entrepreneurial way to deal with a great social need. If the Republicans like it, it's entrepreneurial, and the Democrats like it because it's a social justice issue. But I said, what has to happen? I'm not going to make it a Democrat or Republican. It's an American issue. We have to work together as Americans. And I mean, honestly, I don't know if you want to edit this out, but what I've said to them, high-level congressional people, I said, what you're seeing in culture is the breakdown of community. The breakdown of community comes from the breakdown of the nuclear family. The basis, the foundation of family is mom and dad and respect for authority. And I said, once you destroy the nuclear family, destroy community, destroy society. But I said, now, one of my friends told me years ago, he said, Mike, the Republicans are like the dad, the Democrats are like the mom. Mom and dad have got to get along. I thought that's brilliant. And I said to them on both sides of the aisle, I said, when you fight and call names, it doesn't add any credibility. It diminishes everyone's authority and it diminishes respect and it adds to the breakdown we're seeing. We've got to find things we can agree on. And I think food is one of those issues. Let's come together. Let's find what we agree on. Let's work together and let's change our communities.
Mike, I love that vision. I love that background. Thank you so much for sharing. And it makes me wonder, I couldn't agree more, right? My background is in journalism, specifically working in food and agriculture. And that's where I started really working closely with nonprofits. And I've always been amazed that for all of the division in our society, food really does or has the capacity to bring people together. But I feel like a lot of people don't, maybe they say that, but they don't necessarily believe that it's possible when they read the headlines and see how much infighting there is across the political spectrum. So what is it about you, like how you're wired, that has given you this calling to do this kind of social impact, entrepreneurial work, and have the confidence that it's actually going to have a positive outcome for everyone?
Well, I'm a pastor, right? So I'm a Christian pastor primarily, and I love people. And whether I deal with Republicans or Democrats, I love them all. I love them all. And they find a welcome and a reception. They're very comfortable. I mean, I've done giveaways. I'm not going to mention names, but some high level, high energy in the news of politicians. But I want to tell you, they've stood next to me giving out food to the poor. I respect that. So there's good people, they're good people. They get caught up in these games, which we got to stop. Calling names. We got such huge issues that if we put our heads together, again, I don't want to be redundant, we could solve it. The gentleman running for mayor in New York City, Mandami, his whole deal of free grocery stores.
Right.
Okay. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think the government is not good at running anything. And I've told him that, honestly. Would I help? I'll help whoever. However, what it's highlighting is there is a disparity, right? Mm-hmm. You've got entire neighborhoods that are totally neglected because of consumerism. They're not going to go in there and make an investment because there's no return. So they're called food deserts and a food apartheid. And in those areas where poor people have to live, working poor, you don't have the goods and services that we enjoy. I mean, I could go right down the street. I've got 3 grocery stores within a mile, right? If I had to, I could walk, not even a mile. There's people that they don't have transportation and there's no option except a bodega and there's no nutritious food. And for on the issue of nutritious food, okay, one of the things we've done is we put out fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh produce, healthy food. We try not to handle soda, candy, but give them the option to purchase healthy food at a low cost. There's SNAP. You know what SNAP is, right?
You don't mind maybe give our audience some context for this?
Supplemental nutrition. It's basically, it's like food stamps. It's government subsidy. In New York State, they have a program called Double Up Bucks that if you'll spend, I forget what the cap is, on produce, they'll double that. So let's say they give you, in your SNAP benefit, they'll give you $20 more a month. Well, really, it's $40. Now, at our prices, we try to be 30% below Walmart. We literally led New York State in Double Up Bucks transactions.
Wow.
Led the state. So that's why they're all coming to look at us. Like, how do you do it? It's simple. It's simple. We could do this. Well, see, what we need, Nate, more than money, okay? What we need is we need to have a paradigm shift in America of how we address food insecurity. Number one, American business is very generous, right? I find American business people are the most generous in the world. However, they're busy, and this is not a priority. And so the way we've addressed food insecurity is food banks, right? Food pantries. And it's great. But food banks were for emergency use only, not for sustainability. I had both Cornell University and RIT come and do impact studies, speak to the people shopping in the store. And a lot of them are EBT, you know, they're on food stamps, they're economically challenged, working poor. Those that are able to go to food pantries said they only got 14% of what they needed from a food pantry. And that without the store, they wouldn't have made it.
Wow.
Now, this could happen. We could do this across America, but we got to have a strategic planning. You have to have the food producers, you know, the Campbells, the Del Montes, the Skippy peanut butter, the producers, the philanthropy piece, and the legislative piece, where you sit down and say, how do you do it? Now, if I'm talking too much, just interrupt.
Oh, no, this is great, Mike.
40% of the food, the statistics are 40% of the food produced in America is wasted. And I see it every day. A lot of it's fresh produce, meat, frozen. We just got a whole trailer load, a full tractor trailer load of organic sauce that can't go into our store. We have to give it all away because when they were making the sauce, they mistakenly used the wrong kind of sugar. Nothing wrong with the sauce. Now, we could have put that, but we had to say, no, it won't be sold. We're going to put it out for donation. This happens every day, multiple times a day across the country. Mislabeling, someone damages a pallet, a truck arrives late, et cetera, and they don't know how to deal with it. It goes to the dump, right? You got to save this stuff. So it's all going to waste.
Right. It's so, like you said, the problem is very apparent. And to your point earlier, Mike, it seems like there's so many opportunities to put heads together and figure out a solution that allows people who are hungry to be fed, that allows businesses and other leaders to come to the table and contribute and be a part of the solution. I'm curious if you could maybe drill in a bit to one more layer of detail into how do you define the working poor, and maybe what is it that people most misunderstand about hunger here in the U.S.?
Yeah. Okay. The working poor, just getting by. People, like especially Utica, has got the highest percentage per capita refugee immigrants of any city in America. It was the refugees, the Bosnians that came in the late 90s that saved the city. When I told you about the economic meltdown, they opened a refugee center here. And Utica's a melting pot. I mean, we've got people from Burma, Malaysia, Thailand, Bosnia, all over. And they all get along. They get along. But these people want to work. They don't want to go on government assistance. And then you got people that are just pounding it out. You know, a young couple with a kid. They're just getting by, just living, just above the poverty line. How do you afford this stuff? And when I see the waste, it sickens me. Now, if we can address the waste, you got food waste. Then there are literally billions of dollars being wasted in how we spend it. When I did this talk in Washington, it's on our website, my last graphic, they had me speak 10 or 12 minutes, just give an overview. The last graphic I did was I said, let me do a comparison, a 3-year comparison between us and a typical food bank. I said, in 3 years, and I didn't say which food bank it was near us, in 3 years' time, they received over $50 million in government support. Mm-hmm. And then another $30 million in donated product, you know, for a grand total of say 80 or 82 million. And they gave away 87 million. All right, great. 5+ over what you took in. I said, if you contrast that with what we've done over the same 3-year period, we received a total of 265,000 total and gave away 125 million.
Wow.
Gas. How? Simple. Entrepreneurial. Simple. No waste. Simple. Modest salaries. Right? Simple. Focused on the bottom line. Simple. Focused on the mission. It's not that hard.
That's so interesting, Mike. And I think something that I want to maybe draw out there is this idea that you can do simple, practical, pragmatic approach.
Yes.
And get a result, an outcome for society that is vastly beyond, I think, what many nonprofit leaders would even have in their wildest imagination. What is it that compels you that, hey, if we go back to basics, we can have extraordinary results? Like, what is it that makes you believe that's possible and actually deliver that?
What makes me believe, see, first of all, is who's leading it, who's driving it. It has to be missional. It has to be passion. Before I got on this call, I got a phone call from a husband and wife that started a not-for-profit. Their child had cancer. And as they were sitting through the treatments in the hospital, saw their children and what the parents are going through. And they started a not-for-profit to bring toys and goods to these kids to help them as they're going through treatment. So I just gave them a bunch of Nintendo Switches and games and donations, right? For nothing, because it's missional. Now, if I started with, hey, there's a lot of money in the system, I think I should make $500,000. I need an executive assistant to make $300,000. I need an executive secretary. Well, by the time I populated my office, and I could only be in this type of surroundings, and I'm only going to work, 9 to 4, okay, you're going to have problems. Where when I tell you, our guys, when we bring them on, our folks, when we begin to share what we do and why we do it, when I tell you to the man, to the woman, they'll come and volunteer for no pay. Because people want to help people. And you know what I've learned too? Struggling people are the most desirous to help other struggling people. I watch in the store someone that is poor. Mm-hmm. Let's say we have 6 of an item left. That's a great deal. Let's say, well, I only need 1. And then I watch people that come from other parts of town and grab all 5. And we say, no, you can't take all 5. You can't take all 5. But I've noticed it's been true, a truism, that poorer people, struggling people, suffering people are more sensitive to other people's suffering. I think it'd be good for people that have not struggled for a while to walk a few steps in someone else's shoes and be a little mindful. And if you can do something to help, then help, right? We only pass this way once, right? Do what you can. How much money do you need? How much do you need? How much is enough, right?
Yeah, it's great perspective, Mike. And I'm curious, a lot of nonprofits, we're recording this in September 2025. There's been quite a bit of volatility on the funding landscape for nonprofits and a lot of uncertainty about what the future holds. There's a lot of struggling happening. I'm curious, as you observe people who are struggling economically, yet seem to have such a deeper perspective and this sense of helping others, helping their fellow humans. What is it that we can learn from that experience from those who maybe are really going through a truly desperate time in their lives and yet are able to be so thoughtful and other-centered? What is it about that maybe context that we can learn and grow from as leaders?
I think it brings us back to the best of what we are, right? Let's get back to that. Love for our fellow man, concern for others, and all this consumerism and selfishness, self-centeredness, right? Let there be a shift. Let it be a wake-up call. These communities can solve these problems. I think that I stay apolitical on this stuff because it's so volatile and you don't always understand why they're doing what they're doing. But I do know, and I do agree, there's tremendous waste, almost to the edge of fraud in the not-for-profit world. And so I think there needs to be a reset. But anytime you bring change, there's going to be pain. And so for us, as soon as the Trump cuts were announced, the SNAP cuts, we said, for anyone that comes into our store, we're giving you 10% off. We're going to help you. Don't worry, we're here. They loved it. How can you do that? Because I'm not dependent on the government to ensure our success. We're going to be here long after Trump or Biden or whoever else it is in the White House, right? Does not determine what we do.
Yeah, that's really helpful perspective, Mike. And it seems like there's this sort of spirit of generosity and there's this bigger, you mentioned casting a vision earlier. And I know you recently acquired a 150,000 square foot distribution center, which is a huge milestone. And I suspect your vision is broader than just New York, although obviously you love New York and have done tremendous amounts of good there. I'm wondering what that additional infrastructure maybe makes possible or how you're thinking about the future of Compassion Coalition and what you're able to do for families across America.
Great question. We try to address dramatic needs as they arise. And I've got friends all over the world. So like when the LA wildfires hit, one of my friends pastors a large church out there and they're right on the ground. We sent him an entire load of beautiful brand new clothing to distribute. I was on the phone last night with a missionary in Baja, Mexico, tremendous poverty. We're going to work on sending goods down to them. I don't know so much about food getting across the border, but we could send clothing, footwear. Yeah, that warehouse has enabled us to do a lot. So when you realize $100 million, that's a lot of product. We're giving away about probably 2 trailers of product a week.
Wow.
But our need is, Nate, not just to say this again and again, we need national partners. I'm trying to get a sit down with the national. Walmart's been phenomenal with us locally, but we could do so much more if we could connect nationally. And we got like a Walmart, a Kroger, Campbell's Soup, Heinz, or you name them out there, the companies. All they understand is Feeding America. I'm not knocking Feeding America, but I'm saying there are other ways to do this. And our model has proven so successful. And if we could populate these in food desert areas, it's not just the grocery store. If it's community-based and you got people from that community to work it and help it, you start to restore and rebuild, right? And all of a sudden, like crime, everything begins to change. Neighbors helping neighbors. I think it's not the way, but it's a way.
Right. I think that's so powerful. What do you think, Mike, is the biggest limiting factor? If you were to wave a magic wand that all those national partners are at the table this afternoon ready to work, what does it take to get us from here to where we are today to everyone situated at the table? What's it going to take?
Well, we could get the government people to the table. We've got to get the food producers, right? And see, for so long, Nate, it's incredulous to me. I talked to a major philanthropic organization the other day. They've been courting us in New York City to do this in many of the boroughs. I mean, I know personally a few of the borough presidents and I spoke to them at length about it. And I said, we can't come in because we don't have the resource to stock the shelves. I don't have enough. and it's all going in donation. But if they would get on board and help us, we could do it. So the money's there. But I said to this philanthropic organization in New York City, I said, did you ever consider hosting a meeting where you had the food producers, the food distributors, you as the philanthropers, and the government piece? And we came up with a strategy that we all agreed on, right? A working solution. Like, we never thought about that. Okay. We're giving away millions and millions of dollars, right? With no thought. You see, I've talked to people in Congress, and some of them get a little bit upset saying, well, why should the head of a not-for-profit make more than a congressperson? I said, I agree with you. I agree. I think that if you want to make that much money, go into business.
Sure.
But if you're going to be especially something to help the poor, wow, there shouldn't be that much disparity in what, again, it becomes all about us. And then, by the way, we'll help those in need. We did it when we didn't have a penny from anybody and still don't.
Yeah. There's a bit of a paradigm shift that has to happen, it sounds like.
Has to. Well, I think right now, see, you got questions being engendered with what President Trump is doing, okay? And then what Mr. Mondami is doing and bringing up, although I'm not promoting it, either one. I'm just saying, think for a minute. Why is this such a hot button issue? Why is there such inequity in the food system? Why does the government have to step in now and bring cuts? Why is there dysfunction? With all the money being spent, we can't solve this problem? I'll tell you who could solve it: business people. Business people solve it right away.
That's so interesting. Yeah, again, I think as a business owner myself, I see this in so many entrepreneurs that there's unlimited creativity, unlimited possibility if we just got to the table and talked it through.
Right.
You know, Mike, I'm curious, as you've shared so many great stories already, is there an event or an anecdote from your many years of service leading and building Compassion Coalition with your team that really stands out to you and sort of underscores the importance and the impact of what you're doing?
Oh, so many, Nate. It's just so rewarding. You see the impact in health, and like, we're helping so many schools, inner city schools now in Utica and in Troy, New York. The kids are so impoverished. We're helping foster kids. They're coming out of abusive homes. And a lot of times it's grandparents. They'll take them in. And when they leave the home in the winter, no coat, no shoes, it's heartbreaking. We got so many trailer loads of this stuff, right? Years ago, I shipped a load of food to a missionary in the Dominican Republic. And by the time it got to the missionary, with the corruption and theft, out of 24 pallets on the container, he ended up with one. So I get a phone call from the UN ambassador from the Dominican Republic to the U.S. And he said, Reverend Servello, we'd like your help in the Dominican Republic. And I said, is this a joke? Furious. He told me who he was. I said, sir, I would never send one package to your country again with the corruption unless and until I had the assurance from the president of your country that it wouldn't be stolen. And I hung up. But I never hear from him again. Next thing I know, I get an invitation. When do you want to go meet with the president?
Wow.
What? So I flew to Santo Domingo. I met with the president. I told him what happened. And he goes, I give you my word that'll never happen again. I said, okay, then I give you my word, I will help. Well, his secretary of women's rights, she was the UN secretary of women's rights from North and South America, the UN secretary. And she didn't speak a lick of English, and my Spanish is poor, but I understand enough, I can't speak it. And she starts saying, tell the pastor thank you. Tell the pastor I really appreciate him getting me medical supplies for our country. And I'm like, oh, I said to the interpreter, whoa. I said, she thinks it's Christmas and I'm Santa Claus. I said, I don't get medical supplies. And he said to me, Reverend, you do not interrupt Madam Secretary when she's speaking. I started to perspire. I'm getting really nervous. And so I put my head down. I started to pray. And I felt like an impression from the Lord to say, let you tell her that her desire to help her people comes from the Lord, and that you'll pray with her. And if she prays, that God will answer her prayer. I said, okay. I told her that. We prayed together. She wept. I left, and I thought, well, whatever happens, happens. The next week, I was doing a large pastors conference in New England, and one of my friends in the back is waving at me. I got to talk to you. And he said, can you use medical supplies? And I thought, these guys are all jokesters. They're jokesters, I thought, say something. I go, come on. He goes, no, seriously. He goes, I've been trying to reach you. I said, well, I was in the Dominican Republic. He said, a major medical production company just shut down. They gave me all the contents. I said, are you serious? I sent her 2 full containers of medical products. It was amazing, miraculous. You see how God cares for the poor and how government leaders care and how if we just made ourselves available, what could happen?
Yeah, that's such a powerful story, Mike. And I just, we don't talk a lot about faith on this show, but as a Christian myself, I think faith and that something, whatever your background as a nonprofit leader, I do think there's something to be said for recognizing there are things beyond us that have such a profound impact on the real lived world. And that story is a great illustration of that. You've talked several times about the role of prayer in your life. And it seems to me that that's one way you're staying both grounded, but you're also recognizing and having faith that these things are possible. I wonder if you could say a few more about prayer and how to stay grounded.
It's prayer and faith because I know, number one, this is God's heart for the poor, number one. Number two, this was never my idea, so I can't take credit for it. I felt the impetus from the Lord to start this. And so it's his deal. I'm just there opening the door. He does whatever he wants. So the Lord has always sustained us. When we got our 150,000 square foot building you mentioned, that was so sovereign. It was a $12 million distribution. It was a donut factory. It's got 30,000 square feet of frozen storage, 30,000 square feet of refrigerated, and the rest is all dry. Loading docks. It was made for us. Perfect.
Yeah.
When somebody bought it, had it bought for $11.5 million, and then the deal fell through. Because it's so unique, they put it back up on the market. Nobody was biting. They dropped it from 11.5 to 8.5. And I thought, I'm going to make an offer. And I said, I'll offer you $4 million and a tax receipt for the full market value. Well, they hemmed, they hawed, and finally they agreed.
Wow.
I didn't have $4 million. Well, because of the work we do, these politicians have been so touched. Someone called the governor and said, we got to help Mike with his building. And the governor, long story short, said, we'll do it. She wrote us a check for $2 million, just like that.
Wow.
We sold our old building basically for $2 million, the one that was donated, and we got into it debt-free. Now, that's a miracle.
That's amazing.
Because we don't have that overhead cost, we're able to give away more.
Yeah.
But it's supernatural. It's how did these things happen? It's like, wow.
That's just incredible, Mike. Thank you for sharing that. And it's just inspiring to hear, just again, the things that, one thing I often tell my clients is that it is very easy in a situation where maybe your back is up against the wall or you're not sure how you're going to pay your bills or have the kind of impact for your clients that you want, next month, much less next year, to step back and to say, what could be possible? Like, what could be great about this, right? How could we turn the situation around? And so hearing the kinds of both the challenges that you and your team have overcome and just the incredible way, the community response, the extraordinary events that have unfolded to make this kind of service possible to your community is just so incredible.
I feel we're on the edge of systemic change. I hope I could play a part in it. I mean, I'm 72, but it's definitely going to change. The way we're addressing hunger, poverty without dignity has got to change. See, what this has done, this model has restored dignity where people can come and buy what they want when they want it, right? Like, for example, we always have put ice cream out for $1. Like Ben and Jerry's, you go to the store at $6, $7. Again, we're not trying to make money. We want to let people have access. And poor families come in, Mom, we want ice cream, Dad. Okay, $1, wow. At the same time then, when tomatoes are $3 a pound, we're $1 a pound. When grapes are $4 or $5, we're $1. That's how we try to source this stuff so we can make it available And we haven't even gotten into the health impact yet. So they're going to do studies on how people's eating habits have changed because they have access to affordable, nutritious food. Like I'm telling you, we're selling so much produce that they never would have gotten. They couldn't afford it.
You're right. There are so many sort of ripple effect benefits for human health, for local communities, for public safety. I mean, the list goes on and on, and you've done a really wonderful job articulating that. Let me sort of paint a bigger picture, which is imagine that there is something like the Compassion Coalition model in every major urban area in the United States. How does the world look different than it does today?
Well, again, I think what you'll see, hopefully, is transformation in those communities. But here's the key. It's not Big Brother coming in and you got this infrastructure. But the way it would work is almost like a cooperative community based. The people that live in that community taking ownership for their friends and neighbors. See, again, if we don't look at it like a franchise and a money-making model, but as a way to serve our fellow man, this would work. This would really work. But it would take people that are missional, mission-driven, not money-driven, and nothing else other than to serve your friends and neighbors.
Sure. How does this model work, again, based in that sort of premise of community first, helping your neighbors? I work with a lot of clients who serve rural constituents. Oftentimes, there's sort of a combination of the food desert piece and also the logistical challenges of getting food to very remote areas. I'm curious if you have any experience there, how you think this process might look in principle in places like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I honestly don't know. I know some people are doing mobile markets. Other people are doing carpooling. They care and they'll drive them to the store. They'll carpool, bring them in, buses, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's especially in rural areas, that it's a big issue.
Absolutely. Those ideas are really insightful. I hadn't considered the transportation and the pop-up markets and those kinds of things.
And again, neighbor helping neighbor. People have done this. I mean, we've had people for years pile their neighbors in the car and drive up, let them do their shopping, then drive them home. That is the core value of what's going to change our culture is neighbor helping neighbor. However that works out, great. But that's just got to be the major value.
Yeah, I love that. Mike, how do you think, I'm going a little bit off script here, but I think it sort of dovetails nicely. So we have a lot of conversation right now about sort of the pace of change, right? Technology, artificial intelligence, the possibility for job displacement. A lot is happening really quickly. Increasingly, we live in isolation from each other. We work in virtual spaces. And if we chose not to come into physical contact with another human being, we could theoretically probably do that.
So true.
How does this work in an environment where there is so much disconnection from our neighbors, when there's so much disruption, for lack of a better word?
Well, again, we started, that's why I said, Nate, is that people gather around food. It's a community-based, a communal gathering point. This is what we need. This is to restore community. One of my friends, I did the conference with in DC, Kevin Kelly, he's a top architect, but he's brilliant. He's like a sociologist. He articulates so well. And he talks to these companies, like he does design for Whole Foods and these major stores. And his whole deal is create spaces for people to gather, right?
Yeah.
Build community. But you know what? I think the younger generation, I lose track of what they call them now, but they have more of a desire for authenticity and relationship. I think it's going to shift. They're done with the solo, playing by yourself. They want to interact with other human beings.
I'm so happy to hear that. I have 4 kids ages 7 to 14, and I see their longing for technology. And I also see that when they're off of their devices and with their friends or with other people, having experiences together, they're so much happier. So I'm also heartened like you, Mike, that there's brighter days ahead.
I believe it. Well, everything goes in cycles, right? It goes in a cycle.
That's right. I know we're running shorter on time. I have a couple more questions.
Go ahead, Nate.
One of them would be, social impact communicators really use stories to open people's hearts. You've done that in a really spectacular way today. Is there a story or a book, a movie, whatever medium you choose, that has really had a profound impact on your life and your work? It could have been in the last year, but it could have been much further back in the past that really transformed how you think about things.
No, to me, it was the gospel, was the Lord Jesus just changing my life and turning me from just selfish, thinking about myself, to being concerned for others. And as a pastor and loving our city and trying to help, seeing people hurting and suffering, it breaks my heart. I can't stand to see children without. It hurts me, like with these refugees. It's such a hot button political issue. And I tell the politicians, look, that's up to you to open the gate, close the gate. That's your job. However, once they land here, they're my friends and neighbors, and I'm commanded to love my neighbors. So I'm going to help them.
Yeah.
Now, you do whatever you have to do, but for me, I'm going to help them. And so we have a refugee center in Utica. When they're settling refugees, if they need furniture, we'll help with furniture, clothing, whatever we could do. We do it across the state, actually, and even in New England, we'll help different organizations trying to resettle people.
Wow.
A lot of the folks we hired in our store were refugee immigrants that came through the center, and people with what they would call barriers to employment, people coming out of addiction recovery and out of prison. One gentleman from Burma, he still can barely speak English, but you know what? He's married, he's got a child, he's building a life. He knows he's got job security. It's a family. We have 5 different languages spoken in our store. And what's beautiful is you'll see a Bosnian immigrant going on Google Translate with an immigrant from El Salvador.
That's awesome.
So it is so cool. It's so amazing. But it's people loving people, right? We're all immigrants.
That's right. That's right.
Right? We all trace our ancestors that came over. But
that's amazing, Mike. I wonder if you were to advise listeners of this podcast, whether they're nonprofit executives, for-profit companies, what are the 3 character traits that leaders need to emulate more than ever to embody the kind of neighbor helping neighbor ethic that you've described?
Well, I think number 1, be present, right? Be aware, because it's so much on your plate. Be present and be interested and focused on your people. It's very easy to just walk past people and just a brief hello, but not connect.
Yeah.
I think to really connect. And then number 3, to do whatever you can to help. Be aware of what's going on and then try to be helpful. If you're running a company and you've got excess, you've got extra, do something for someone else, right?
Yeah, I love those 3. That's so powerful, Mike. When people look back on your life and contributions, what do you want them to say?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, Nate. My goal would be for the Lord to say, well done, that I did what I could with the right motive, right? For the right reason. Not for any other reason than to love others and to truly help. Not to make myself look good or to take advantage or maneuver a posture. But that's what's so beautiful about the gospel is you do it for the least, right? You actually do it for people that can do nothing for you. And that really checks your motive. Because so much of what we do is transactional. I do for you, now you do for me. But what about when you do for someone that could never, ever repay you, right?
Yeah, well done. That's great. Mike, I love that. 2 more questions. I'm going to ask you in a moment to give us some more details on where we can go for more information about Compassion Coalition. But before I do that, you mentioned several times the need to bring more national partners on board, the need for food producers at the table. If you had all the right people in the room together, what is the message you would want them to hear today?
Exactly what we're talking about. I'd say that we could take their resource, their excess, and put it to phenomenal use. Now, you think about, you're donating this, right? Or some of it's liquidated. And we would do both. We could do liquidations for the store, we could do donations. But then, if this was replicated, and you take that excess, and you could transform it into clothes for kids that don't have clothes, shoes, furniture for someone that's, let me tell you another story. It's hard, you're not going to believe this, but we get a phone call from a gentleman, cold call at our compassion office. He said, can you help me? And I said, what's wrong? He said, I'm in an apartment because I got out of a nursing home. I'm wheelchair bound and I've been here a month. A social service agent came to check on me, but they never came back. So my son who works with me went and checked on him. He said, Dad, he's in this apartment with just a wheelchair. No bed, no pillow, nothing. There's another gentleman he was in a nursing home where they had a traumatic brain injury. The guy was 100% normal before he had this injury, but now he's a step behind. But he takes care of him. Every night he'll come, take him out of his wheelchair, lay him on the floor. It's heartbreaking. In America, lay him on the floor, and then in the morning go pick him up, put him back in his chair.
Goodness.
Okay, we went, that's it. We furnished his apartment. We gave him a bed, whatever. The gentleman that was helping him recently died. He went into the hospital and died. The funeral director called us and said, can you believe he doesn't even have a shirt to be buried in? So we were going to buy clothing for him, but the undertaker said, well, we have clothing donated. But back to my point, people helping people, the poor helping the poor. This is the state of what people are living in. It's hard to believe because we live in such insular world. And then, those people getting all this money, well, let's look at the whole system of where the money's going and figure it out. I think we'd be surprised.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Mike. That's such a, on the one hand, heartbreaking story. On the other hand, just a sign of, even when you literally have nothing, still being willing to and being eager to help your fellow man is just profound.
Yes.
Mike, as we think about helping, as our audience wants to know and learn more about Compassion Coalition, see how they can be helpful in your cause, where can they go to learn more?
Sure. Our website is www.distributehope.org. And on there, you'll see everything about the Compassion Coalition piece, which is all the donation, and then the bargain grocery piece, which is our low-cost food stores in both Utica and Troy, New York.
Amazing. Mike, it's been such a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Look forward to staying in touch. Thanks again.
All right, my friend. Bye-bye.
I just want to give one more big thank you to Mike Servello. He is such a world-class leader, a nonprofit thinker who's getting things done for clients in his neighborhood with potential massive positive impact in other urban areas where food deserts are a real issue, where economic hardship is a lived reality. And so again, if you haven't yet gone to check out Compassion Coalition, be sure to do so. Distributehope.org is their website. And Mike is just such a generous giver of his time, his expertise, his wisdom. I really loved so many things that Mike shared. And one of them is something that I've believed, but it was really great to hear him articulate, which is find ways to bring people together naturally, right? He talked about meals and food as a natural gathering force, a gravitational pull to bring neighbors together. I believe more nonprofits could be doing that, even national nonprofits. Think about opportunities regionally, locally, but with, national ramifications, opportunities to bring people together, maybe even globally, right? I think we're not thinking big enough, often enough. And so Mike really challenges us in a really positive way. So thank you, Mike, once again. If this episode got you thinking, I want to again remind you to go check out that webinar I mentioned on our YouTube channel. Again, the resource is called the Fundraising Confidence Cheat Sheet. If you don't have time to check out the webinar, but you'd like a copy, email me, nate@silvermaplestrategies.com. I'll be happy to share that free resource with you. Again, thank you so much for listening today. That's it for today's show. And remember, social impact work is soul work. Lead like you live. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.